Well, more than other regions. I mean, that's for sure. Because, I mean, as we know, the effects of climate change are getting aggravated as we move higher up. So, I mean, warming intensifies. There are glaciers, which are storage areas of water. So that's, I cannot put it into figures, that varies from region to region, but definitely they will be more affected. There will be, like the Arctic, sort of the kind of, as we can say, the hotspots of effects of climate change. I would say more than any other kind of management. I mean, managing natural resources includes managing for goods that are required, food or whatever else can be gained from the environment, but natural resource management is also environmental management, managing the environment for providing services which indirectly benefit local communities. So it's, in my area, in my opinion, a core area of benefiting rural communities. I would say, of course, similar to cutting down any kind of forest. I mean, if you cut down primary forest, that's of course, that's affecting biodiversity more than if you're cutting down secondary forest. Cutting down secondary forest, let's say, would be less of an effect on, I mean, changing natural vegetation. But of course, secondary forests can provide, almost depending on density or other qualities, can affect ecosystem services just as much as cutting down primary forests. So I think there's a change of thinking concerning how we value secondary forests is very important. The term secondary kind of implies second rate, second order, but I think they're still a very important component of natural environments. I think it can. That is too simple. But as I pointed out in my talk today, I mean, if shifting cultivation is carried out in traditional ways with long fallow periods, it can definitely fulfill certain conservation objectives, conserving water flow, preventing soil erosion. As I mentioned before, nature is like conserving biodiversity or the natural biota. It's not as effective because secondary forests are definitely different from primary forests, but it can. According to my experience, mostly they can be success stories. I mean, I've done in the past a bit of work on community forestry in Nepal, which is almost as much as a success story as joint forestry in India. In Germany we have also communal forests. There is some level of decentralization. I think it has been proven that it can be more effective than centralized management of forests, especially in countries where government institutions are not as strong. I mean, the question is, which climate is an intensely complex factor. It's influenced by the sun. The radiation of the sun varies. We cannot do anything about that. Now, some changes are really affected by this. But then, of course, there are issues, emissions. That's where it starts. I mean, cutting down on driving, cutting down on other kinds of emissions, cutting down, especially it goes to the address of Western nations, cutting down on eating too much meat, which requires, which also, I mean, creates emissions. For me, the most important thing would be the effect on land cover, because land cover can have an effect on climate change. For instance, urbanization. I mean, if you create, more concrete surfaces, it has an effect on radiation. It has an effect on surface flow and so on. So that is something. I mean, like for instance, to make a decision. Shall I move into the house that my father built, or shall I build my own house? So I moved into the house that my father built and say, okay, I'm not going to cover more surface area. So things like this. So it's and that also affects land use. Again, as I'm coming back to sort of the meat-based diet, the need to have a lot of livestock, that creates a certain type of land use. Forest can be cut down, pastures are created. So I think that is something that can be tackled on a planning level. No. You know, I'm so impressed by how I don't know India very well. Last time I was here was 19 years ago, and I would say and I've been here in the Northeast, no? And so I can see a tremendous change of awareness. That is, I mean, when I'm coming to a meeting like this, but also when I'm talking to students. I've been teaching at Asian Institute of Technology in Bangkok, where we had a lot of students from South Asia. And I can see there is a change of thinking. And if groups like the Foundation, I mean, they create the wording, no? And they can just really provide this steady trickle now of awareness creation. I can again cite the example of Germany. When I was around 20 years old, the Green Party was very young. They were a pioneer. And according to the latest elections in Germany, they are moving up to becoming one of the dominant parties. And so a change of thinking is possible, and foundations like the Eastern Himalayan Forum, very important. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.